They laughed at my garden. They laughed at the dirt under my nails. They laughed at the flowers I loved, as if they were just weeds. But what they did not know was that those same flowers kept my heart alive during the darkest season of my life. You see, sometimes beauty grows quietly. Sometimes strength hides in soil and silence. And sometimes the person they look down on is the very one holding their world together. So, before you judge a woman's garden, you might want to ask who she is growing it for and why. This is my story, and I am finally ready to tell it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you are tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe. Because tomorrow, I have saved something truly special just for you. My name is Margaret. I am 56 years old. And for most of my life, I have lived in the same quiet house, on the same quiet street, with the same quiet garden in the back. It is not a big house, but it has everything I need. A soft chair near the window, a kitchen that always smells like something warm, and shelves filled with old books and dusty picture frames. I live alone now. My husband, Richard, passed away 5 years ago. My daughter, Emily, is grown. She lives in the city with her husband and 2 children. They visit sometimes when life is not too busy. Most days I do not see many people. I speak to the mailman. I wave to my neighbor, Mrs. Clark. But mostly, I spend my time in the garden. It is not just a hobby. It is my joy, my escape, my peace. I wake up early, before the sun is too strong. I slip on my boots, pick up my little straw hat, and walk outside to the backyard. The air smells fresh in the morning. The grass is cool. The birds sing their songs like tiny symphonies above me. I kneel down and press my hands into the earth. It feels soft and alive. I plant, I prune, I water, I listen. Every flower has its own story. The roses need attention. The lilies like space. The tulips wake up slowly. Stretching toward the light, I speak to them sometimes. I know that sounds silly, but I do. I tell them how proud I am when they bloom. I tell them I am sorry when I forget, to protect them from the wind. I thank them when they stand tall after the rain. There is something about gardening that makes time feel different. It moves slower, more gently, like the world is whispering, "There is no rush, just grow." My hands are not soft anymore. They are rough and worn from years of digging, planting, and caring. Some people might call them old. I call them strong. In the afternoons, I make myself tea. I sit under the old cherry tree, with its branches curled above like a grandmother's arms. And I watch the colors change in the light. Yellows and reds, purples and whites, everything moving, everything breathing, everything alive. Some evenings, Emily calls. Her voice is quick and tired. She talks about work, about the children, about traffic, appointments, and noise. I listen. I ask questions. I tell her about the garden. She always laughs. "Mom, you and that garden," she says. "It is just dirt and plants. You sound like a fairy tale." I smile. But inside, it stings a little. Because to me, the garden is not just dirt and plants. It is where I feel most like myself. It is where I feel closest to Richard. It is where I find comfort when the world feels too loud. But I do not argue. I let her laugh. After the call, I returned to the garden. Sometimes I light a small candle near the stone bench where Richard used to sit. He would watch me work for hours, reading his book, sipping his tea. He never said much, but he always watched. I talked to him sometimes, too. "Look at them," I whisper. "The marigolds came back stronger this year." I like to think he hears me. At night, I go to bed early. I read a few pages of a book. I look at the photo on my nightstand, the one of me and Emily when she was just 5, sitting in the garden, both of us laughing, her little hands full of daisies. Back then, she loved flowers. She loved everything I showed her. She would follow me around with her tiny watering can, making puddles in the soil. She used to call me Flower Queen. I wonder when that changed. I wonder when she stopped seeing the magic. But I do not worry too much. Life moves, children grow, and I still have the garden. That is how my days go. Quiet, simple, full of life in the smallest of things. And until recently, I believed that everything was just fine. But then, something small happened. Something I almost ignored. And it changed everything. It started with a visit. A simple, ordinary visit. But something about it felt different. Not loud, not obvious. Just a quiet shift in the air. Emily had called me the night before. "Hi, Mom. We will stop by tomorrow. Just for a little while. The kids want to stretch their legs." I was happy to hear it. I had not seen them in almost a month. I missed their voices, their laughter, their questions. And I missed her too, even though our conversations had grown shorter, more polite than warm. I woke up early the next morning, filled with nervous energy. I made a lemon cake from scratch, the one Emily used to love when she was younger. I set out a fresh tablecloth. I picked the brightest roses from the garden and placed them in a vase near the window. I even trimmed the edges of the garden path just in case she stepped outside. By noon, their car pulled into the driveway. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door before they could knock. There they were. Emily, standing tall and tired, her arms crossed loosely. James, her husband, carrying the diaper bag and a tablet for the kids. And my 2 grandkids, Oliver, age 7, and little Grace, almost 4, running toward me with excited steps. "Grandma," Grace shouted, her tiny arms wrapping around my legs. My heart swelled. I knelt down and kissed her soft cheek. Oliver gave me a quick side hug before running toward the backyard. "Do you still have that swing?" he called out. "Of course," I smiled. "It is waiting for you." Emily stepped in with a half smile. "Hey, Mom, smells like lemons." "It is your favorite," I said softly. She glanced at the table and nodded. Then her eyes flicked toward the window. I followed her gaze. She was looking at the garden. I waited for a comment, maybe even a compliment. But none came. Instead, she laughed, a small, dry laugh under her breath. I looked at her, confused. "What is it?" I asked gently. She shrugged. "Nothing, just you and that garden. You really go all in, don't you?" Her tone was not cruel, but it was not kind either. It was the kind of laugh someone makes when they think something is silly. I stayed quiet. James came in and gave me a polite hello. He always seemed a little unsure around me. I offered him some tea. He said yes, then sat down and scrolled through his phone. The children played outside for a bit. I watched them through the kitchen window as I poured tea. Oliver was already on the swing, kicking up dust. Grace was wandering between the flowers, pointing at things, giggling. I smiled. But then Emily spoke again. "Mom, do you really still do all that planting yourself?" I turned to her. "Yes, I do, every morning." She tilted her head, as if trying to understand something strange. "But why? I mean, at your age? Is it not a bit much? All that bending, digging, watering?" I felt my stomach tighten. "I enjoy it," I said simply. She picked up a rose petal that had fallen on the table, turned it in her fingers, then said, "You know, most people just get their flowers from the store now. It is easier." I took a slow breath. "It may be easier, but it is not the same." She smiled again, this time with a hint of something sharper. "Still, Mom, it is just a garden, not a business." I said nothing, but something inside me moved, like a shift in the soil, like roots tightening, like a storm coming. It was not what she said. It was how she said it, as if my work, my love, my garden meant nothing. I changed the subject. We ate cake. We drank tea. The kids played. But her words stayed with me. After they left, I stood alone in the garden. The swing moved back and forth slowly. Grace had left a little plastic cup near the lilies. I picked it up, but my hand trembled slightly. I looked around at the garden. My sanctuary. My pride. For the first time in a long time, I felt unsure. Did it really matter? Was it really foolish? I shook my head. No, it mattered to me. That should be enough. But deep down, I could feel something changing. The next morning, I woke up before the sun again, just like always. The house was quiet. The kettle hissed gently as I made my tea. But something felt different inside me. I stepped outside into the garden with my cup in hand. The grass was wet, with dew. The sky was just beginning to turn pale with morning light, but I could not feel the same peace I usually felt. I looked around at the beds of flowers, the rows of herbs, the small archway Richard had built long ago. Everything was where it had always been, and yet nothing felt the same. Emily's words echoed in my mind. It is just a garden, not a business. Is it not a bit much at your age? I did not want to be bothered by it. I told myself it was nothing, just a passing comment from someone who lived in a different world. But it stayed with me like a shadow that would not leave. I bent down near the lavender bush and started trimming the dry parts. Usually, this made me feel grounded, calm, focused. But now, my mind was racing. Why did her words feel so heavy? Why did I care what she thought? I am not young anymore. That is true. But I am not weak. And I have always taken care of this garden, with my own 2 hands. Still, doubt had crept in. Was I wasting my time? Was I clinging to something that no one else valued? Was I becoming invisible? I sat down on the stone bench where Richard used to sit. The cool stone touched the back of my legs, and I took a deep breath. I thought about the early days, right after he passed. The garden had saved me then. when the grief was too heavy, when the silence in the house felt like it could crush me. The garden was the one place I could breathe. I could dig. I could sweat. I could cry into the soil and not feel ashamed. And slowly, with each new bloom, with each season, I had started to feel alive again. Was that silly? Emily would not know. She was busy. She had her own life, her own noise, her own pressures. But it still hurt. Because once upon a time, she had loved this place too. She used to run barefoot through the garden when she was little. She would pick wildflowers and tie them into messy little crowns. She would laugh and call herself a garden fairy. Where did that little girl go? Maybe she grew up. Maybe I stayed the same. I sipped my tea and stared at the sky. Later that day, I went to the local florist shop. Not because I needed anything, really, but because I wanted to feel something normal. The woman behind the counter smiled warmly when she saw me. "Margaret, your dahlias were a hit last week, sold out by noon." I smiled back, even though my heart felt tight. "That is good to hear," I said softly. "You know," she added, "a customer asked where they came from. I told her your name. She said she wanted to meet the person who grew such perfect flowers." That should have made me happy. It did, in a way. But it also made me wonder why Emily had never said anything like that. She had no idea I supplied the shop. She never asked. She never seemed interested. As I walked home with an empty basket and a head full of thoughts, I felt the confusion grow. Why did she laugh at the thing I loved most? Why did it feel like my world, this beautiful, blooming world I had built with care, did not matter to her at all? I am not someone who expects much. A kind word, a moment of understanding, that is all. But I left that florist shop feeling both proud and invisible at the same time. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed with the window slightly open. The wind rustled through the trees. The scent of jasmine drifted in. But I did not feel calm. I felt lost. Like I was standing in a place I once knew very well. And suddenly, the path forward was gone. Closed my eyes and whispered into the dark. Am I being foolish? There was no answer. Only the sound of leaves moving gently in the night. A few days passed. The garden returned to its quiet rhythm. The tulips began to open. The roses started showing color again. I kept busy, planting, trimming, watering, trying to let the days smooth out the edges of my thoughts. But Emily's words still echoed in the back of my mind, even when I hummed to myself. Even when the birds sang above me, even when the air smelled of mint and soil, I kept asking myself the same question. Why did it hurt so much? One afternoon, while I was rinsing out old pots near the hose, I heard the phone ring inside. I wiped my hands quickly and rushed in. It was Emily. Her voice was lighter than usual. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to say thank you again for the lemon cake. The kids loved it. Grace keeps asking when we can come back." I smiled, even though I still felt the sting from our last visit. "That is sweet," I said softly. "You are always welcome." She paused for a moment, then added, "And the flowers in your garden really are beautiful. Grace talked about them the whole ride home." That small comment made something shift inside me. It was not a full apology, but it was something. "Thank you," I said. I waited a beat longer. Then I asked gently, "Emily, Did something feel off the other day between us? She went quiet. I could hear her breathing on the other end. After a moment, she said, "What do you mean?" "I mean, the way you spoke about the garden, about me still working in it. It stayed with me." Another pause. "Oh," she said. "I did not mean anything by it, Mom. I guess I was just surprised. You still do so much. And I worry you know about your back, about you getting tired." It sounded caring, but also distant, like someone watching from far away, not truly understanding. "I appreciate that," I said. "But the garden is not just work. It is a part of me." She sighed. "I know. I forget that sometimes." I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I softened my voice. "Would you like to come next week? Maybe just you and me. We could have lunch out in the garden, like we used to." She hesitated. Then she said, "All right, that might be nice." We said goodbye soon after, and I stood there in the kitchen for a long time, holding the phone to my chest. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that things could return to what they were, or maybe even become something new, something better. Later that evening, I began to prepare, not just the food or the garden table. I began preparing my heart, too, to open, to speak, to listen. It had been a long time since Emily and I had spent time together without the children, without distraction, without polite smiles. Back when she was a teenager, we would sit for hours outside. She would tell me about her classes, her friends, her dreams. Sometimes she would cry over something small, a grade, a boy, a fight. And I would hold her hands and tell her that feelings matter, even the small ones. But then she grew up, and things became efficient. Short messages, scheduled visits, holiday calls. I missed the warmth, the in-between moments. I hoped, truly hoped, that this lunch in the garden could be a way back. The next morning, I baked fresh bread and made a salad from the vegetables in my garden. I even made a small bouquet for the table. Nothing too perfect, just natural and full of color. As I placed the cloth on the table under the old maple tree, I felt a nervous flutter in my chest. At exactly noon, I heard her car. She stepped out, wearing a soft blue sweater and sunglasses. "Hi, Mom," she said, walking toward me. Her voice was calm, not cold, not overly warm, but enough. We hugged briefly. She looked around. "This really is peaceful," she said. "It always has been," I replied. She sat down at the table and looked at the food. "You remembered my favorite bread." "Of course," I said, smiling. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Not awkward silence, just quiet. The kind of silence that leaves room for thought. Then she looked up and asked, "Mom, were you really hurt by what I said the other day?" I met her eyes. "Yes," I said, "but I am not angry. Just sad." She nodded slowly. "I think I forget sometimes how much this place means to you. I see you doing things, and I think, why is she still working so hard?" "It does not feel like work when you love it," I said. She looked down at her plate, then whispered, "I am sorry." It was not dramatic. It was not loud, but it felt real. And in that small moment, I chose to trust her. It had been 2 days since Emily's visit to the garden. Our quiet lunch had ended gently. No big arguments, no dramatic moments, just simple food, soft words, and a few glances that held more meaning than either of us could say out loud. I was grateful for that, grateful for the effort she made. And yet, somewhere deep in my chest, I still felt a tremble I couldn't name. That evening, after watering the far end of the garden, I sat on the wooden bench by the greenhouse. I took off my gloves, laid them beside me, and watched the sky turn gold. I was tired, but not the usual kind of tired. It wasn't from planting or bending or lifting. It was a tiredness in my spirit, a tiredness that came from trying to be understood. I didn't speak about it much. Not to Emily, not to anyone, really. But sometimes, being unseen, especially by the people you love most, takes more from you than physical work ever could. As I sat there in the soft breeze, I heard footsteps approaching from the side path. It was Linda, my neighbor. She had lived 3 houses down since her husband passed. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, smiling gently. "Not at all," I said, patting the space next to me. She sat with a small sigh and looked around. "This garden gets more beautiful every year, Margaret," she said. "You've got magic in your hands." I chuckled. Maybe just a bit of stubbornness. We both laughed softly. Then she turned to me and added, "I saw your daughter here the other day. She looked thoughtful." I nodded. She was. Linda hesitated for a moment, then said something I didn't expect. "Margaret, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but be careful." I turned to her, confused. "Careful?" She looked at me with kind, steady eyes. "Yes. Sometimes people look at what we've built, the things we've made with love, and they see it as something to fix or change, even if they don't mean harm." I felt something shift in my chest. "What are you saying?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Linda placed her hands on her lap. "I'm not saying your daughter has bad intentions. I don't know her that well. But I've seen it before. Children stepping in and thinking they're helping, when really, they're slowly taking things apart." I looked down at my hands. Calloused, strong, used to soil and sun. "Emily isn't like that," I said quietly. "She just doesn't always understand." Linda nodded. "I hope that's all it is." We sat there in silence. The wind blew gently through the trees. A robin landed on the garden wall. "I had a cousin," Linda continued, her voice low. "She had a little antique shop. Her daughter convinced her to sell it, said it was too much for her, promised they'd take care of everything. That shop was her soul. Once it was gone, she faded." I felt a tightness in my throat. "I'm not planning to sell anything," I said quickly. "I know," she replied. "But just listen to your heart, Margaret, and don't ignore it when it warns you." After she left, I stayed on the bench a little longer. Her words kept circling in my mind like birds over a storm. Was I imagining the warning? Was I just too sensitive, too protective? Or was there something under the surface I wasn't ready to face? The next morning, I walked through the garden early, checking each bed. Everything was still in order. The hydrangeas had begun to bloom. The herbs were thriving. Even the climbing roses along the old trellis had new buds. And yet, I felt uneasy. Later, while I was sweeping the garden path, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Hey, Mom. Been thinking. We should talk more about what you want to do long-term with the garden. Maybe there are ways to make it easier on you." I stared at the message for a long time. The words looked kind, helpful even, but they felt cold, like a knock on a door I wasn't ready to open. Long-term? Make it easier? Was she already imagining a version of my life without the garden? Without the work? Without the joy? Without me? I didn't reply right away. Instead, I put the phone down, wiped my hands, and walked to the center of the garden. I stood there, surrounded by life, by color, by scent, and I listened, not with my ears, but with the quiet, still part of my soul. And somewhere deep inside, I heard it, a warning, soft but clear. The morning after Emily's message, I woke earlier than usual. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden light across the garden. Everything looked peaceful. But inside me, there was a quiet storm. I made a cup of tea and sat on the back steps with my notebook, the old green one with bent corners and smudged pages. It was the one I used to write in when I needed to think, not for lists or tasks, but for remembering, for sorting out who I was when things felt too heavy. I turned to a blank page and wrote, "What do I want?" The question sat there, looking back at me. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I'd forgotten how to say it out loud. I thought about my life, about the years I spent raising Emily, about the days I juggled work, cooking, cleaning, and still found time to tuck her in at night. I thought about the times I put my dreams on hold, the art classes I skipped, the books I never wrote, the plans I kept folded in the corners of my mind. I wasn't bitter. I loved being a mother. But now I had something that was mine. This garden. This small green world I had built with my hands and heart, and yet, in just a few words. What you want to do long-term, Emily had reminded me that to her, it might still look temporary, like a hobby, like a project I would one day let go of, but I wouldn't, because this garden wasn't just a thing I did, it was a reflection of who I had become. I stood up, closed the notebook, and walked barefoot through the grass. The dew clung to my feet, cool and real. I stopped beside the lilac bush I planted 10 years ago, the one Emily helped me choose. Back then, she was 17. She had picked the lavender one because she said it smelled like something out of a fairy tale. I remember how she laughed, sitting beside me with dirt on her jeans. She said, "When I have my own house, I want a garden just like yours, Mom." That memory hit me hard, not because it hurt, but because it reminded me of a time when she saw the garden the way I did, with wonder, with joy. I went inside and pulled out an old photo album. Flipping through the pages, I saw images of birthday parties in the garden, family dinners at the outdoor table, Emily picking tomatoes with a sun hat too big for her head. She used to love it here. So what changed? Was it growing up? Was it moving away? Or was it something I couldn't see? Something in me? I closed the album slowly. No, I told myself. I'm not going to fade just because someone else doesn't understand my joy. That's what women are, often expected to do, isn't it? make themselves smaller, simpler, easier to fit into someone else's idea of reasonable. But I've lived too much life for that. I looked at my reflection in the window. Hair silver at the roots, lines around my eyes. But my posture was steady. My face, calm but clear. I whispered to my reflection, I am still here. I am still me. That afternoon, I replied to Emily's message. I didn't make excuses. I didn't apologize for loving my garden. Instead, I wrote, Thank you for your message. I know it came from a place of care, but please understand, this garden is not a burden. It gives me strength. It reminds me of who I am. I don't need to make it easier. I just need to know that you respect what it means to me. I pressed send, and I didn't wait for a reply. For the rest of the day, I worked with a kind of energy I hadn't felt in weeks. I cleaned the bird bath. I planted new basil. I repaired the edge of the greenhouse door. The garden didn't care if I was older now. It didn't ask me to be anything other than myself. As the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft orange, I sat again on the bench. This time, I didn't feel unsure. I didn't feel tired in my spirit. I felt grounded. Because today, I remembered who I am, and I will not forget again. 3 days passed after I sent the message to Emily. She didn't reply. Not even a short, okay. I didn't panic. I didn't text again. Instead, I poured my time into what I loved, into the garden, into myself, and into the quiet parts of life that often go unnoticed. One morning I was pruning the lavender when I heard the sound of tires on gravel. I stood up, wiped my hands on my apron, and turned toward the driveway. It was Emily. She stepped out of her car wearing dark sunglasses and holding her phone in one hand, like it was part of her. Her heels clicked on the path, the one I'd made from broken tiles and old bricks I'd collected over the years. She paused when she saw me, then gave a small wave. Hi, Mom. I nodded. Morning. There was an awkward pause as she looked around. You've done a lot out here since the last time I visited. I've been busy, I said. She walked closer, looking at the raised beds, the new trellis I'd painted, sky blue, the herbs arranged in neat rows. This is more than I remembered, she said slowly. I could hear it in her voice. The surprise, not just at the beauty of the place, but at the care, at the work, at the love. She didn't know. She really didn't know what I'd built. And maybe that wasn't her fault. Maybe I never told her the full story. Maybe I let her believe it was just a hobby, just a way to pass the time now that I was older. But that wasn't true. I gestured toward the bench under the oak tree. Let's sit, I said. I'll make us some lemonade. She nodded and followed me. A few minutes later, we were sitting side by side, glasses sweating in the warm air. I got your message, she finally said. I've just been thinking about what you wrote. I waited. She looked down at her lap. I guess I didn't realize how much this place meant to you. I thought, I don't know, maybe it was getting too hard. I took a slow breath. Hard? Yes, some days. But that's not a reason to stop. Do you stop doing what you love just because it's not easy anymore? She looked surprised. No, I suppose not. I smiled gently. Then why would I? She was quiet. I continued. When your father passed, this garden was just dirt and weeds. I needed something to care for, something that would grow when everything else felt like it was ending. I didn't build this for decoration. I built it to keep breathing. She looked at me, eyes softening. I didn't know that. I know, I said, and that's okay. But Emily, this garden isn't just where I plant flowers. It's where I found myself again. She looked around slowly. At the bench her father had built. At the little pond where she used to feed the fish. At the greenhouse that once stored winter oranges and her childhood drawings. There's so much history here, she whispered. There is, I said. But it's not just the past. It's my present, too. She turned back to me. I guess I thought, maybe you'd want to move closer to me. Into the city. Somewhere easier. Somewhere more modern. I smiled sadly. Modern can be wonderful, but it can also be lonely. Concrete doesn't feed the soul the way soil does. She nodded slowly. Then, after a pause, she said something I didn't expect. Would you show me everything? I mean, really show me. Walk me through what you've done here? My heart swelled, of course. So I did. We walked side by side through each path. I showed her the compost pile I had carefully maintained for years, the lemon tree I grew from a seed, the wildflowers that came back every spring, no matter what, the tools I cleaned and oiled by hand, and as I spoke, she listened. Not just with her ears, but with her eyes, with her heart. When we reached the back gate, I pointed to the small wooden sign hanging on the fence. Emily read it aloud. Planted with love, grown with strength. She looked at me. Her expression was different now. Not pity, not concern, but respect. Mom, she said softly, you've built something incredible here. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. I touched her hand. You see it now. That's enough. And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't just about defending my garden. It was about helping my daughter understand that I was still growing too. Still learning. Still full of life. I wasn't just her mother. I was a woman who had built something beautiful, not just with my hands, but with my whole heart. And finally, she saw me. It was a week later when Emily came again. This time, she didn't just show up without warning. She called first. Her voice was light, a little nervous. Hey, Mom, are you free this Saturday afternoon? I was hoping we could talk, and maybe look over something together. I agreed, though I wasn't sure what she meant by something. Still, her tone had changed. Less rushed, more careful, and that meant something to me. Saturday came, and the sky was a clear, soft blue. I wore my garden jeans and a wide sun hat. I baked lemon scones, set out a pot of tea, and arranged a few sprigs of mint in a jar. Nothing fancy, just quiet kindness. When she arrived, she was holding a folder. It was thick, stuffed with papers. She hugged me a little longer than usual and smiled. Hi, Mom. I hope you don't mind. I brought some ideas. We sat at the garden table. She laid the folder between us like it was something precious. I've been thinking a lot since our last talk, she said, about what this place means to you, about how much you've built here, and how I didn't really see it before. I nodded, but stayed quiet. She opened the folder. Inside were papers, notes, printed photos, and sketches. I started putting together a kind of proposal, she said, blushing slightly. It's nothing official. Just thoughts. I picked up one of the pages. It was a hand-drawn layout of my garden. Each bed was labeled. There were notes in neat handwriting. Add bee-friendly plants here. Extend the herb section. Create a shaded seating area for guests. Guests? I looked up, eyebrows raised. Emily laughed softly. Okay, I'll explain. You've created something beautiful here, Mom. But I think other people would love it too. What if we opened it up a little? To the community. Just a few weekends. Garden tours. Maybe a small produce stand. Classes on composting. You could teach, or just be the guide. I blinked. Not out of shock, but something close to awe. You want people to visit my garden? I asked. Yes, she said quickly, but only if you want to. You'd still be in control. I just thought, maybe the world needs more places like this. Quiet, alive, peaceful. And you've already done the hard part. You've made it real. I looked back at the pages. It was clear she had spent time on this. The sketches were thoughtful. There were even notes about parking, timing, and how to make sure it wouldn't overwhelm me. I sat back, tea untouched, heart full. You've really thought about this, I said. She nodded. After our last conversation, I started remembering things, like the lilac bush, and helping you collect rainwater in buckets, and how calm I always felt here. I guess I forgot how much this place shaped me too. I felt a warmth rise in my chest. Emily, I said softly, I never expected you to take this so seriously. She looked almost hurt. I didn't take you seriously, Mom. And I'm sorry for that. There was a pause, the kind of silence that means something is healing. Then she smiled again. I know this is a big idea. I'm not trying to take over. I just want to help. If you say no, I'll respect it. I looked around the garden. The bees floated over, the lavender. The leaves shimmered in the breeze. Birdsong filled the spaces between our words. Was I ready to share this with strangers? Maybe. But more importantly, I realized something else. Emily wasn't trying to fix me. She was trying to join me, and that changed everything. I picked up one of her sketches and ran my fingers across the pencil lines. Let's start small, I said. Her eyes lit up. Maybe just a community herb day, I continued. People can come learn about thyme and mint, maybe plant something, take it home. Yes, she said excitedly. And we can print little info cards, and maybe... I held up my hand gently. One step at a time. She laughed. Okay. One step. We spent the rest of the afternoon planning and laughing. For the first time in years, it felt like we were partners. Not just mother and daughter, but two women building something together. As the sun began to set, she packed her folder and hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, Mom, she whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment. I'm proud of us, I said. And deep inside, I knew something important had shifted, not just in the garden, but in both of us. The day arrived sooner than I expected. I woke early, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. This was the first time I would open my garden to visitors, people I did not know. I checked the beds one last time. The herbs were trimmed and fresh, the flowers bright and welcoming, the pathways clear. Emily had helped me put up small signs. They were simple but pretty, with neat handwriting. One said, "Welcome." Another pointed to the herb section. At the garden gate, I placed a small table with a guest book. I was not sure if anyone would write their names, but I wanted to try. When the first car arrived, my heart jumped. A woman stepped out with a wide-brimmed hat and a friendly smile. She looked around slowly, as if she was discovering a secret place. "Hello," I said, walking toward her. "Welcome to my garden." She smiled warmly. "It is beautiful," she said. "I have never seen anything like this in the city." Her words made me smile. It felt good to hear them. Good to know the work I had done meant something to someone else. One by one, more visitors came. Some came alone. Others came with friends or small children. They moved quietly among the plants, touching leaves gently, smelling flowers and reading the signs. Emily stayed close. She helped guide people, answered questions, and took photos. I saw her smile often. It was the kind of smile that means she was proud. A little boy tugged at my sleeve. "Can I plant a seed?" he asked. I nodded and gave him a small pot filled with soil and some basil seeds. His face lit up as he carefully placed the seeds in the dirt. "That is a good gardener," I told him softly. He looked at me seriously. "Like you." I felt tears prick at my eyes. They were tears of joy, the kind of tears that come when you feel seen and understood. The afternoon passed slowly. I talked to visitors about the herbs, the flowers, and the history of the garden. I told them why I planted the lavender near the bench, and how the lemon tree came from a seed my father gave me. Some people shared their stories, too. A woman told me she loved gardening but never had space at home. A man said he grew herbs to cook for his wife. Each story added something to the garden, like it was not just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who came. As the sun started to go down, the last visitors left. Emily helped me close the gate. We stood for a moment in the quiet. "I think it went well," she said. I nodded. It did. More than I expected. Emily smiled and pulled out the guest book. "Would you like to see what people wrote?" I took the book and opened it. There were names, of course. Some had written kind messages. "Thank you for sharing this beautiful place. I feel calm and happy here. Your garden is a gift." One note caught my eye. It was from the woman with the wide-brimmed hat. "This garden is a reminder that beauty can grow from pain and care. Thank you for your strength." I closed the book and looked at Emily. I did not know I could feel this proud. "You should," she said quietly. That night, I sat by the window, looking out at the garden under the moonlight. It was peaceful. The flowers were resting. The herbs smelled fresh in the cool air. I thought about how much this garden had taught me: patience, hope, strength, and most of all, the power of sharing. I was not just a woman with a garden. I was a woman who could build something that touched others, who could grow not just plants, but connections. I smiled to myself. Tomorrow, I would do this again, and I would be ready. The morning was different. Gray clouds covered the sky like a thick blanket. The air smelled fresh, but heavy. Rain was coming. I sat by the kitchen window, watching the garden. The plants stood still, waiting. Emily was not coming today. She said. She had work. I understood. This was my quiet day. The first drops began softly, like a gentle tap on the glass. Then the rain grew stronger. It fell in steady waves, drumming on the roof, splashing on the leaves. I poured myself a cup of tea. I held it close, feeling the warmth through the cup. Outside, the garden looked wet and tired, but alive. I thought about the visitors from the weekend. Their smiles, their kindness, the little boy planting seeds. It all felt like a dream. A good dream. But with the rain, my thoughts turned inward. I remembered the times when the garden was just a small patch of dirt behind the house, when I did not believe I could make it grow. Back then, my daughter did not understand me. She laughed at my old clothes, at my quiet life. She did not see the work I did, the love I poured into every seed. Sometimes I wondered if she ever really cared. But now, she was here, helping me, planning with me, supporting me. I smiled softly. The rain slowed down, and I opened the window a little. The cool air mixed with the scent of wet earth and fresh leaves. It was peaceful. I thought about the moments of pain, too, the silence between us, the harsh words that were said. Those moments did not disappear. They lived in the garden, too, in the broken branches, in the weeds that grew wild. But the garden also taught me to forgive, to let go. I thought about forgiveness, and how hard it can be. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving myself. For the mistakes I made. For the times I did not speak up. For the times I felt weak. I looked at the garden again. It was still, waiting for the sun to return. I felt a quiet strength grow inside me, like the roots of the trees, deep and hidden, holding fast. The rain stopped. The clouds moved slowly. A soft light appeared. I stood up and walked outside. The earth was wet beneath my feet. The leaves glistened with water. I touched the petals of a rose. They were cool and soft, perfect, even with the rain. I thought about the future. The garden would grow. My daughter and I would grow. There would be hard days, days when the rain would come again, but there would also be sun. I took a deep breath. I felt ready to face whatever came next, ready to keep growing in the garden and in my heart. I went back inside. I sat down with my tea again, and I smiled. The garden was not just a place. It was a story, a journey of pain and healing, of love and hope, and it was mine. The day came when I knew I could not wait any longer. I had to speak with Emily. Not about the garden, not about plans or visitors, about us, about the distance between us. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I entered. She looked up and smiled, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes. "Emily," I began slowly, "I need to talk to you, honestly." She nodded, a little nervous. "Of course, Mom." I took a deep breath and sat down across from her. The light from the window made her face soft, but serious. I feel like we have been avoiding something important, I said quietly. There have been times when I felt hurt by what you said or did. Times when I did not know if you really understood me. Her eyes dropped to the table. I know, Mom, she whispered. I was not always kind. I was young and thoughtless. I did not see the hard work you did, the love you gave. I reached out and took her hand. It was not just about the garden or the clothes. It was about feeling like I was invisible to you, like my life did not matter. Tears welled in her eyes. I am sorry, she said. I did not mean to make you feel that way. I know, I said softly. I am sorry too, for the times I did not try harder to understand you. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that is full of meaning. Do you think we can be honest with each other now? I asked. She nodded slowly. I want to try. That day, we talked for hours about our memories, our mistakes, our hopes. I told her about the long days in the garden, the early mornings when I planted seeds before the sun rose. She shared stories of her own struggles, the pressures she faced, and the times she felt lost. We laughed and cried. Sometimes the tears came first, then the smiles. It was not an easy conversation, but it was real. When it ended, I felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Emily hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mom, she said, for being brave. I held her close. I am proud of you, I said, for wanting to understand. From that day, our relationship changed. Not perfectly, but with more care, more patience. We made a promise to speak honestly, to listen without judgment, to support each other, even when it was hard. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the power of words, how a strong conversation can break down walls, can heal old wounds. I realized that this was another kind of growth, not in the garden, but in the heart, and I was ready for it. The truth came slowly, like the first light of dawn breaking through a cloudy sky. I did not see it all at once. Instead, small pieces fell into place, one after another. It started with a letter. One afternoon, as I was watering the herbs, the post arrived. Among the bills and advertisements, there was an envelope with no return address. Curious, I opened it carefully. Inside was a note, written in a careful hand. The words were simple, but heavy with meaning. It spoke of my daughter's struggles she had hidden from me. How she felt trapped by expectations and afraid to share her pain. How she had made mistakes but hoped for forgiveness. At first, I was confused. Why had she never told me? Why had she laughed at my garden when now I knew she needed it? The calm, the quiet, the beauty. Tears came slowly, not of anger, but of sorrow. I had misunderstood her all along. That evening I called her. Her voice was soft, a little shaky. Did not know how much you were hurting, I said. I wish you had told me. I was afraid, she whispered, afraid you would be disappointed, afraid you would not understand. I do understand, I told her firmly, more than you think. We talked for hours that night, about fears, hopes, and the future. For the first time, I saw my daughter, not just as my child, but as a woman with her own battles. The next days were full of reflection. I thought about all the times I had judged her too quickly, the times I had shut down instead of listening. I saw my own mistakes clearly, how my silence had built walls between us. But I also saw something else, a chance to heal, to build bridges. Decided to share a secret with her, something I had never told anyone. I told her about the garden's beginning, how it was not just a hobby, but a place where I found peace after a hard time, how the flowers and herbs grew from love and care, just like relationships do. She listened carefully, and for the first time, I saw a soft smile, a smile full of understanding. The day she visited the garden again, I felt a new hope. She walked, slowly among the plants, touching the leaves gently. She did not laugh or mock. She asked questions, and I answered with joy. We planted new seeds together, not just in the soil, but in our hearts. This was not the end of our troubles. There would still be hard days, but now we had something stronger. We had truth, and that made all the difference. I finally understood that love is not always easy. Sometimes it is a quiet battle, a slow healing, a patient waiting for the rain to stop and the sun to shine again. And in that moment, I felt peace. There came a moment when I realized that walking away was not a defeat. It was a choice, a step toward protecting myself and finding peace. After the truth was out, after the talks and tears, something inside me still felt heavy. Not because I did not love Emily, but because love alone was not enough to fix everything. The pain lingered like a shadow in the corners of my heart. I needed time to breathe, to heal, to understand who I was beyond the roles I had played for so long. One quiet morning, I packed a small bag. I did not tell anyone where I was going. I just needed to be alone, to feel the earth beneath my feet without the weight of expectation. I drove away from the house, from the garden, from the memories that both comforted and hurt. The road was empty, and the sky was clear. I stopped at a small inn by the sea. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was like music. It was wild and free, unlike the silence I had lived with for so long. In that room, I allowed myself to rest, to cry without shame, to be angry without guilt. I thought about everything, the years of trying to hold my family together, the moments I had lost, the words I wished I could take back. I walked along the beach, feeling the cold water touch my feet. The wind blew through my hair, carrying away some of the heaviness I felt inside. For the first time in a long time, I looked at my reflection in the water. Not just the woman who had been a mother, a wife, a gardener, but the woman who was still here, still strong. I realized that walking away was not about leaving Emily behind. It was about finding myself first, about becoming whole again. I called her one evening. "My dear," I said, "I needed to do this, to step back, to breathe." There was silence on the line, then a soft voice. "I understand, Mom. Take all the time you need." That simple understanding was a balm to my soul. The days passed slowly. I read books I had forgotten about. I wrote in a journal, pouring out my thoughts and fears. I watched the sunrise each morning and felt a quiet hope grow inside me. Sometimes I thought of Emily, of the garden, of the life I was slowly rebuilding. I knew this walk away was not the end. It was a beginning, and I would return. Stronger, wiser, ready to face whatever came next. For now, I walked away, not to run from pain, but to find peace, to heal my heart and prepare to love again, without fear. Even after I walked away, the pain did not disappear. It stayed with me like a shadow that followed me quietly. Some days, it was soft and distant. Other days, it felt sharp and close, like a wound that had not yet healed. I thought the time alone would erase the hurt. But pain is not something that simply goes away. It has its own rhythm, its own pace. I spent many mornings sitting by the window in that small room by the sea. The waves rolled in and out, endless and steady. Outside, the world kept moving, but inside, my heart felt still, stuck between hope and sorrow. I missed Emily. I missed the garden too. But more than anything, I missed the warmth of connection, the feeling that I was understood. I remembered the laughter we once shared, the small moments of kindness, and the times when we believed we could fix everything. Now, those memories were like fragile glass, beautiful but easy to break. Some nights, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed conversations, the harsh words, the silences filled with unspoken pain. I felt alone, even when I was surrounded by people. It was a quiet kind of loneliness that no one else could see. But I also knew that this pain was part of the journey. It was a sign that I was healing, that I was feeling deeply, that I was not giving up. Slowly, I began to write down my thoughts. Each word was a small step toward understanding. Sometimes the words were angry. Sometimes they were gentle, I wrote, about the days when I wanted to give up and the moments when I found strength in a simple breath. I wrote about love, how it can hurt and heal at the same time. One afternoon, I took a walk along the rocky shore. The wind was cold and strong, but I welcomed it. It reminded me that I was still alive, that I could face the storms inside me. I found a smooth stone and held it in my hand. It was cool and steady, a small piece of the earth that had endured many seasons. I thought about how I wanted to be like that stone, strong, patient, enduring. The days turned into weeks. Sometimes, I called Emily. We spoke slowly, carefully, like two people trying to rebuild a bridge. Other times, I just listened to the sound of the sea. I did not know when the pain would fully leave. Maybe it never would. Maybe it was meant to stay as a reminder of what I had survived. But I also knew that I was learning to live with it, to carry it gently, to let it teach me how to be kinder to myself and to others. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. The pain was still there, but it no longer ruled me. I smiled softly. I was still growing, still healing, still here, and that was enough. Sometimes I found myself lost in memories. The past called to me like a distant song, familiar, sweet, and full of light. I missed the days when life seemed simpler, when laughter filled the rooms, and the weight of worry was not so heavy on my heart. I remembered mornings in the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee and warm bread. Emily and I would sit together, sharing stories and dreams before the day began. Those moments felt like treasures. small and perfect. I missed the garden, too. Not just the plants, but the feeling it gave me. A place where time slowed down, and worries seemed to melt away with the sunlight. I remembered how the flowers would bloom in colors so bright, they looked like they were painted by an artist's hand. How the bees would hum softly, and the breeze would carry the scent of lavender and rosemary. Those were peaceful days. Days when I believed that love was enough to fix everything. But life changed. People changed. And I learned that the past could not stay with me forever. Sometimes the memories were like a warm blanket, comforting and safe. Other times, they made my heart ache with longing. I thought about my mother's voice, singing softly in the evenings, about the stories she told me as a child, full of hope and magic, about the lessons she taught me, to be strong, to be kind, to keep growing even when it is hard. I missed her more than I could say. I also thought about the mistakes I had made, the moments when I had been too proud to ask for help, the times I had shut people out instead of letting them in. I wished I could go back and say sorry, tell them I loved them, hold them just a little longer, but I could not change the past. All I could do was learn from it. One afternoon, I took out an old photo album. The pages were filled with pictures of family gatherings, birthdays, and simple joys. I saw Emily's face as a little girl, her eyes bright with curiosity and laughter. I saw myself, younger and full of hope. Looking at those pictures, I felt a bittersweet mix of joy and sadness. I was grateful for the memories, but I also knew I could not live in them. The past was a part of me, but it did not define who I was now. I folded the album carefully and set it aside. I decided to carry the lessons and love from the past with me, but to keep my feet firmly planted in the present, because the present held its own beauty. Quiet moments, small victories, and the chance to start again. I thought about the future, too. Not with fear, but with a quiet hope. Hope that the days ahead would bring healing and new connections. I knew that some wounds might never fully disappear. But I also knew that time, love, and patience could soften the sharp edges. Sometimes, I closed my eyes and imagined Emily and me walking together in the garden again, planting new flowers, sharing stories, building something stronger than before. Those dreams gave me strength. The past was a place I missed deeply, but it was also a teacher. It showed me what I valued most: family, love, and the courage to keep moving forward. And so, I held those memories close, not to live in them, but to guide me as I stepped into each new day. There is something very healing about talking to a friend, someone who listens without judgment, someone who holds your heart gently, even when it feels broken. After weeks of being alone with my thoughts and pain, I knew I needed to reach out. I needed a voice other than my own. I needed to share the weight I was carrying. I called Sarah, my closest friend since college. Her voice was warm and calm when she answered. "I am glad you called," she said softly. "I have been thinking about you." We agreed to meet at a small cafe near the sea. It was quiet there, with soft music playing and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. When I arrived, Sarah was already waiting, smiling gently. We hugged, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Sitting across from her, I began to speak. Not just the easy things, but the deep, heavy feelings I had been hiding. "I feel lost," I said honestly, "like I am walking through a fog that will not lift." Sarah nodded. her eyes full of understanding. "That is okay," she said. "Sometimes we have to walk through the fog before we find the clear path." We talked for hours about my pain, my hopes, and the struggles I had faced with Emily, about the garden and what it meant to me, about the fear of losing my daughter, and the hope of rebuilding our relationship. Sarah did not try to fix everything. She did not offer empty words. She simply listened. And sometimes, that is the most powerful gift a person can give. I told her how hard it was to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made, how I worried that I had failed as a mother. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "You are not a failure," she said firmly. "You are a woman who loves deeply and tries her best. That is enough." Her words felt like a warm light in the dark. I realized I had been carrying so much guilt and shame that it was time to let go. We also talked about hope, about the small steps I could take to heal, about opening my heart slowly, without rushing. Sarah suggested I write letters to Emily, not to send, but to express my feelings, to say the things I found hard to speak aloud. I liked the idea. Writing had always helped me understand my emotions. After that day, we made a plan to meet regularly, to share our stories and support each other. That simple connection gave me strength. It reminded me that I was not alone. Sometimes healing is not about grand gestures. It is about small moments. A kind word, a listening ear, a shared cup of tea. As I left the cafe that day, I felt lighter, like a small burden had been lifted from my shoulders. I knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but with Sarah by my side, I felt ready to face it. The pain was still there, but so was hope, and that made all the difference. Saying goodbye is never easy. It carries a weight that rests heavily on the heart. Yet sometimes, it is the only way to find peace. After weeks of reflection, conversations, and healing, I knew it was time. Time to say goodbye. Not forever, but to certain dreams and parts of my past that no longer served me. I sat down with Emily one afternoon, the sun casting a warm glow through the window. There was a softness in the air, but also a quiet tension. "I want to talk," I began gently. Her eyes looked at me, curious and cautious. "I have been thinking a lot about us," I said slowly, "about everything that has happened." She nodded, her face unreadable. "It is time for me to say goodbye to some things," I continued. "Goodbye to the hurt I have carried, to the hopes I had that we might fix everything quickly. Goodbye to the anger that has kept me awake at night." There was a pause. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she did not speak. "I am not saying goodbye to you," I added quickly, fearing she might misunderstand. "I am saying goodbye to the pain between us, to the distance that has grown. I want to let go of what divides us." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I do not want to lose you," she whispered. "I do not want to lose you either," I said, reaching for her hand. That moment was fragile, like glass balanced on the edge of breaking. But it was real. It was honest. Saying goodbye did not mean forgetting. It meant making space for something new to grow. I said goodbye to the past where I had tried so hard to control everything, where I had hoped that love alone would fix what was broken. I said goodbye to the idea that I needed to carry the weight of everyone's pain. Instead, I chose to carry my own heart gently, to protect it and nurture it with kindness. I said goodbye to the silence that had filled our home, to the moments when we avoided each other, pretending that everything was fine. I said goodbye to the fear that had kept me trapped in a cycle of doubt and sadness. It was hard. It was painful. But it was necessary. After our talk, I felt a lightness I had not known in months. It was as if a door had opened inside me, a door to healing and hope. I knew that saying goodbye was not an ending. It was a beginning of forgiveness, a beginning of understanding, a beginning of love that was stronger because it had been tested. I took a walk in the garden that evening. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, their colors bright and alive. I breathed in the scent of lavender and rosemary, feeling a deep calm settle over me. I whispered a goodbye to the pain, a goodbye to the past, and I said hello to the future. Uncertain, yes, but full of promise. That night, I slept peacefully. For the first time in a long time, my heart felt free. Saying goodbye had been the hardest thing I had ever done. But it had also been the bravest. Because sometimes to find yourself again, you must first let go. Being alone is not the same as feeling lonely. I learned this slowly, day by day. After I said goodbye, the house felt different. Quieter, emptier, but also softer, like it was giving me space to breathe. At first, the silence was hard to bear. I missed the noise of everyday life, the chatter, the laughter, even the small arguments that felt like a rhythm in the home. I missed Emily's footsteps running through the halls, the sound of the front door opening and closing. I missed the warmth of company, even if it came with tension. But in that quiet, I began to discover something new about myself. I began to notice the small things I had not seen before. The way sunlight spilled across the wooden floor in the morning. The gentle hum of the wind through the trees outside my window. I started to listen to my own thoughts, without trying to push them away. I allowed myself to feel sadness and fear, but also hope. Being alone gave me time to reflect, to understand who I was without the noise of others around me. I took long walks in the early mornings, feeling the cool air on my skin. I watched birds build nests and saw new flowers bloom in the garden. Each day, I planted a little more patience and kindness inside myself. I learned to be gentle with my heart. Sometimes, the loneliness crept in the quiet evenings, when the house was dark, and still, tears would come. I missed the life I had hoped for. I missed the woman I thought Emily would be. But even in those moments, I reminded myself that being alone was a choice I made to heal. It was not punishment or failure. I was giving myself the chance to grow stronger, to find peace inside. Before reaching out again, I began to take care of myself in ways I had forgotten. Simple things, like making my favorite tea, reading books that made me smile, or writing in my journal. I set small goals for each day. Walk for 30 minutes. Water the plants. Call a friend. These small steps helped me feel connected to myself and to the world. I also found comfort in music. Songs that spoke softly to my soul, reminding me that I was not alone, even when I felt that way. One evening, I sat by the window, watching the stars appear one by one. I thought about the future and realized I was ready to face it on my own. Not because I wanted to be alone forever, but because I needed to be whole first. strong in my own skin, with my own voice. Being alone taught me patience. It taught me to listen deeply, to my heart, my mind, and my spirit. It showed me that sometimes we need to step back from the chaos to find clarity. I found beauty in the stillness, in the slow unfolding of each day. And most of all, I found myself. Time has a strange way of changing us. Not all change is visible at first. Some changes happen quietly inside, like seeds growing deep beneath the soil. You do not see the roots at work, but you feel the strength building. I am not the same woman I was months ago. Not just because of what happened with Emily or the pain I carried, but because of the journey I took to find myself again. There was a time when I believed that my worth was tied to how others saw me, to how well I could keep my family together, how perfect my garden looked, or how much I could give without asking for anything back. I thought strength meant holding everything inside and never showing weakness. Now, I know that real strength comes from being honest with yourself, from feeling your emotions fully, even the hard ones, and allowing yourself to grow through them. I look in the mirror and see someone different, not just in appearance but in spirit. My eyes hold more calm, more understanding. There is a softness in my smile that was not there before, a quiet confidence that says, I am enough. I have learned to listen to my own voice, to trust my feelings, to respect my needs. Before, I feared being alone. Now, I appreciate the gift of solitude. It has taught me patience and helped me heal wounds I did not even know I had. I have also learned to forgive, not just others, but myself, for the mistakes, the misunderstandings, the times I wished I had done better. This forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It is a powerful step toward freedom. I have begun to understand that life is not perfect. People are not perfect. Relationships have ups and downs, and sometimes they break. But breaking does not mean the end. It means there is a chance to rebuild with new wisdom, new care, and new boundaries. I have started setting those boundaries, not as walls, but as healthy lines that protect my peace. I no longer say yes when I want to say no. I no longer carry burdens that are not mine to bear. I no longer hide my feelings to keep others comfortable. This is new to me, and it feels good. I am learning to ask for help when I need it, to accept kindness without feeling guilty, to rest without feeling lazy. These simple changes feel like a quiet revolution inside me. I see how far I have come by looking back at old photos, at moments when I was smiling, but inside, I was struggling. Now, my smile is real. My heart feels lighter. Do not know what the future holds, but I am ready for it. Whatever comes, I will meet it with courage and grace. There is a peace in knowing that I am enough just as I am, that my value does not depend on anyone else's approval. I have started dreaming again, not just for others, but for myself. Small dreams at first. Dreams of travel, of learning new things, of planting new flowers. I feel a quiet excitement for life that I had forgotten. Sometimes when I walk through the garden, I pause and feel gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons, the pain, and the healing. Realize that all of it has shaped me into the woman I am now. Stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I am not the same. and I am proud of that. There was a moment when everything felt dark. The days stretched long, and the nights were even longer. I was lost in a sea of doubt, pain, and loneliness. It seemed as if the weight of the world pressed down on me, and I could not see a way forward. But then, something changed. A small light appeared. It was not a sudden flash or a grand event. It was quiet, gentle, almost unnoticed at first. One morning, I woke up and decided to sit by the window with a cup of tea. The sun was just rising, casting soft colors across the sky. The birds were singing their morning songs, and the world was waking up slowly. I felt something inside me stir, a tiny spark of hope. I did not expect it. I had not been looking for it. That small light grew day by day. It was in the smile of a neighbor who waved as I walked by, in the kindness of a friend who called just to check on me, in the simple beauty of flowers blooming in the garden. This light reminded me that life is made up of small moments, moments of joy, kindness, and connection. Even in the darkest times, these moments exist. We only need to open our eyes to see them. I began to notice more and more of these small lights around me. A warm breeze on my face, the sound of children playing outside, the aroma of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Each small light was like a seed planted in my heart. With care, these seeds grew into hope. Hope gave me the strength to keep moving forward, to believe that things could get better, that I could find peace and happiness again. I started to take small steps each day. I went for short walks in the park. I listened to music that made me feel alive. I wrote letters to myself filled with encouragement. Sometimes the darkness still returned, but the small light inside me was stronger than before. It did not chase away the shadows completely, but it helped me to carry on. I realized that healing is not a straight path. It is a journey with ups and downs, but every small light helps to guide the way. One afternoon, I received a phone call from Emily. Her voice was soft, and there was hesitation in her words. "I have been thinking a lot about us," she said. "I miss our talks, Mom." I felt the small light inside me grow even brighter. I knew this was the moment when we could begin to heal together. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near the garden. When I saw her, I felt a mix of emotions: hope, fear, and love. We talked for hours, not just about the past, but about the future we could build. We shared stories, dreams, and fears. The small light between us grew stronger. It was fragile, but real. That evening, as I walked home, I looked up at the sky. The stars were beginning to appear, one by one. Each star, a small light shining in the darkness. I smiled to myself, feeling grateful. Grateful for the small light that had helped me find my way. Grateful for the hope that was slowly filling my heart. This small light is a reminder to all of us. No matter how dark the night, there is always a light waiting to shine. Sometimes it is small and quiet. Sometimes it takes time to grow. But it is there. And when we hold on to it, we can find the strength to heal, to forgive, and to love. Again, I am still on my journey. The small light continues to guide me, and I am learning to trust it more each day. Starting over is not easy. It feels like stepping onto a new path without knowing where it will lead. But sometimes, beginning again is the only way to heal. After months of quiet reflection and slow healing, I decided it was time to take that step. I wanted to live fully again, not just survive, but truly live. The first thing I did was create a morning routine just for myself. Before the day became busy with chores or calls, I took time to be still. I would wake early, even before the sun rose, and sit with a cup of warm tea. I watched the sky change colors as light spilled over the horizon. In those moments, I found peace. I began to write in a journal every morning. At first, the pages were filled with pain and confusion, but slowly, my words changed. They became filled with hope and plans for the future. I wrote about the things I wanted to do for myself, small joys that had been forgotten. Reading books I loved, walking in nature, learning to cook new recipes. These simple activities felt like gifts I was giving myself. Gifts of care and kindness. Taking care of my body was important too. I started walking every day, even if it was just for 15 minutes. Feeling the fresh air, stretching my legs, and noticing the world around me made me feel alive. Sometimes I would stop and breathe deeply, appreciating the scent of flowers or the sound of birds. These small moments helped me feel connected to life again. I also began to explore new hobbies. I enrolled in a painting class at the community center. At first, I was nervous. I had not painted since I was young, but the brush in my hand and the colors on the canvas brought me joy. Painting became a way to express emotions that were hard to say out loud. Each stroke was a step toward freedom. Slowly, my confidence grew. I began to see myself as a person, worthy of love and happiness. Not just as a mother or a gardener, but as a woman with dreams and passions. I reached out to friends more often. I realized that healing does not mean closing the door to others. It means building new connections and asking for support when needed. One friend became a regular part of my life again. We met for coffee and shared stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. Her presence reminded me that I was not alone on this journey. I also made small changes around the house. I cleaned and organized the rooms that felt heavy with memories. I brought in fresh flowers and soft blankets. These changes made the space feel lighter, welcoming, and new. At times, the past would visit like a shadow. Doubts and fears would rise, whispering that I was not strong enough. But I learned to face these feelings without fear. I reminded myself that beginning again was a process, not a race. Every step forward, no matter how small, was progress. I started to dream again. Dreams of travel, of new friendships, of learning new skills. I allowed myself to imagine a future filled with joy and possibility. There was a special moment when I planted new flowers in the garden. As I placed each seed in the earth, I felt a connection to growth and renewal. The garden was no longer just a place of work or memory. It was a symbol of my new beginning. Some days were harder than others. Loneliness would knock, and old wounds would ache. But I learned to be patient with myself. I practiced saying kind words inside my head. I am doing my best. I am worthy of happiness. I am growing every day. This self-kindness became my anchor. I also began to explore meditation and gentle breathing exercises. These practices helped calm my mind when it felt overwhelmed. They brought me back to the present moment, where healing happens. One afternoon, I sat in the garden watching the sunset. The sky was painted with soft pink and orange. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the chance to begin again, for the strength to move forward, for the light that had returned to my heart. I knew the journey ahead would have challenges, but I was ready to face them with an open heart and a steady spirit. Beginning again is not about forgetting the past. It is about honoring it, learning from it, and choosing to live fully in the present. I am beginning again, with hope, courage, and love guiding my way. It was a quiet afternoon when I received the message, a simple text that changed everything. "I want to talk," it said. His words brought a wave of emotions I was not ready for. Confusion, hurt, hope, fear. For months I had been healing alone. I had built a new life, a new peace inside myself. And then suddenly, he wanted to come back. Part of me wanted to run, to protect the safety I had found, to close the door and never look back. But another part of me was curious. Was this a chance for healing, for understanding, or was it just another wound waiting to open? I spent many nights thinking about what to do. Should I respond? Should I meet him? Could I trust him again? I remembered all the pain I had carried, the broken promises, the silence, the feeling of being unseen and unheard. But I also remembered the love we once shared, the laughter, the dreams. The times when we were truly connected, I decided to meet him. Not because I was sure of anything, but because I wanted answers. I needed to understand why he had left and why he was back. When we met, the room felt heavy, with silence. He looked tired, his eyes full of regret. "I am sorry," he said, "for everything." His words were simple but powerful. They opened a door I thought was closed forever. We talked for hours, not about blame or anger, but about feelings, about mistakes and lessons learned. He explained how he had been lost, how fear had made him run, how he realized what he had lost. I listened carefully. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me held back, protecting my heart. I told him how I felt, how hurt I had been, how much I had suffered in silence, how I had struggled to find myself again. He did not try to fix everything with empty promises. Instead, he asked for time, for patience, for a chance to prove he had changed. That moment was both hopeful and uncertain. Hopeful because maybe there was a path back to love. Uncertain because the wounds were still fresh. I knew that if we tried again, it would be different. Not because things would be perfect, but because I was different now. Stronger, wiser, more aware of what I needed. I realized I could not simply forget the past, but I could learn from it. Set boundaries. Protect my heart while opening it slowly. After that meeting, I felt a mix of emotions. Excitement, fear, hope, and doubt. I spoke with my closest friend about what to do. She reminded me to listen to myself, to trust my feelings, to move at my own pace. Days turned into weeks. He reached out often, with small gestures of kindness. A phone call, a note, an offer to help with the garden. I appreciated these efforts but kept my distance. I wanted to see if his actions matched his words. At times I felt my old fears creeping in. What if he left again? What if this was just another disappointment? But I also noticed something new. I was no longer desperate for his love. I was no longer lost without it. I was learning to be whole on my own. One afternoon, as we sat together in the garden, he looked at me with honest eyes. "I do not expect everything to be the same," he said. "But I want to try. If you will let me." I took a deep breath. "I am willing to try," I said. "But we must be honest with each other. No secrets, no pretending." He nodded. "Yes. Honesty." That moment felt like a new beginning. Not a promise of forever, but a promise to be real. I knew this path would be difficult. There would be setbacks. There would be moments of doubt. But there was also the chance for healing, for growth, for love that was deeper and truer. I understood that trying again did not mean forgetting my worth. It meant choosing to be brave, to open my heart carefully, to protect myself while allowing love in. I also knew that if things did not work out, I could walk away without regret, because I had already found my strength. This time, I was not lost. I was not alone. I was ready to face whatever came next, one step at a time. I noticed the change in myself first, before anyone else did. It was quiet, like a slow river moving beneath the surface. I was no longer the woman I had been months before. I was stronger, more aware, more patient with myself and with others. When he tried to come back into my life, I realized I was not the same person who had been hurt and confused. I was someone who had learned to stand on her own 2 feet. In the past, I might have rushed to fix everything. I might have ignored my own feelings to please him or avoid conflict. But now, I took time to listen to what my heart truly wanted. I was no longer afraid to say no. No longer willing to accept less than I deserved. No longer willing to hide my pain, just to keep peace. This new version of me was quiet, but firm. She understood that love was not about losing yourself. It was about growing together while staying true to who you are. I spent many hours reflecting on what had changed inside me. I thought about the long nights when I sat alone with my thoughts, about the tears I shed quietly in the dark, and about the small moments of joy I found along the way. It was a process, a slow unfolding of strength that had been inside me all along. I did not become different overnight. It took time, patience, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. One of the biggest changes was how I viewed myself. I no longer saw myself only as a mother or a caretaker. I saw myself as a whole person with dreams, feelings, and worth. This new self-awareness made me more confident. I walked taller and spoke more clearly. I did not need others to define my value. When he tried to reconnect, I was careful. I paid attention not just to his words, but to his actions. I asked questions. I set boundaries. I was honest with him about my feelings and my fears. I told him that trust was not something I could give easily anymore. It had to be earned again, slowly and sincerely. At times, he grew frustrated. He wanted quick answers, quick fixes. But I stood firm. Healing was not a race. It was a journey. I found that this new strength attracted respect, not only from him, but from others around me. Friends noticed how I seemed calmer and more certain. They told me I looked happier, more peaceful. I began to enjoy simple pleasures without guilt or worry, reading books that interested me, taking long walks in the fresh air, trying new recipes in the kitchen, Each choice I made was a statement of self-love, a way to nurture the person I was becoming. Even when challenges arose, I handled them differently. Instead of reacting with fear or anger, I paused. I breathed deeply. I chose my words carefully. I learned that strength was not about being perfect or never feeling pain. It was about facing difficulties with courage and grace, about forgiving myself when I stumbled, and about continuing forward, no matter what. Sometimes, I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had been broken but was now whole, a woman who had been scared but was now brave, a woman who had been lost but was now found. This transformation gave me hope. It showed me that even when life is hard, we can grow stronger, that we can heal wounds and find new happiness. I knew there was still work to do. I would have days when old doubts returned, when pain from the past whispered in my ear. But I also knew I was better equipped to handle those moments. I was no longer a prisoner of my past. I was the author of my own story. With this new understanding, I faced the future with open eyes. I was ready to build relationships based on honesty and respect. I was ready to embrace love that honored both me and the other person. And if things did not work out, I was ready to let go without losing myself. This was my power, my truth. I was different now. Not because I forgot what happened, but because I chose to grow beyond it. I was no longer defined by pain or betrayal. I was defined by my strength, my kindness, and my courage. This new me was ready for whatever life had in store, and that made all the difference. Choosing myself was not easy. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever made. For so long, I had put others before me. I had tried to please everyone, to keep the peace, and to fix what was broken. But in doing so, I had lost sight of who I really was. The day I decided to choose myself, I woke up feeling a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear, because stepping away from old patterns felt like stepping into the unknown. Relief, because I was finally giving myself permission to be whole again. I spent the morning quietly reflecting. I sat by the window, watching the sunlight move across the room. I thought about the years I had spent bending and breaking for others, how I had ignored my own needs to keep them happy. I realized that choosing myself did not mean I was selfish. It meant that I respected myself enough to set boundaries. It meant that I honored my feelings and my dreams. It meant that I was ready to take care of my own heart. Making this choice changed everything. I started small. I said no to invitations that drained my energy. I stopped answering calls that brought me pain. I created space in my days just for me. I began to say yes to the things that made me feel alive. A walk in the garden, a visit to the local art gallery, a quiet afternoon with my favorite book. Each small step was a declaration of self-love, a way to rebuild the parts of me I had neglected. Choosing myself also meant letting go of people who did not support my growth. It was painful to accept that some relationships were no longer healthy, that not everyone wanted the best for me. But I knew I could not carry the weight of those connections anymore. I had to protect my peace. As I took this journey, I found strength I never knew I had. I discovered that I was capable of standing alone and feeling whole. I learned that my happiness was not dependent on anyone else. One evening, I sat quietly in my living room. The house was calm and still. I thought about the woman I was before, the woman who had struggled with doubt and fear, and I smiled because she had grown. She had healed. She had chosen herself. I understood that choosing myself was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where I was the hero of my own life. This decision gave me clarity. I could see the path ahead more clearly, a path where I was free to live authentically. I realized that choosing myself did not mean closing the door on love. It meant waiting for love that respected who I was. Love that lifted me up instead of pulling me down. I also learned to be gentle with myself, to forgive the times I had not chosen wisely, to accept that growth was a process, not a destination. Some days were easier than others. There were moments when old fears crept back in, when loneliness whispered doubts. But I held on to my choice. I reminded myself that I was worthy, that I deserved happiness and peace. With time, I felt lighter, more hopeful, more alive. Choosing myself gave me power. The power to create a life that honored my truth. The power to say yes to joy and no to pain. It was not a perfect journey, but it was mine, and that made it beautiful. From that day forward, I lived with intention. I made decisions based on what felt right for me, not what others expected. I surrounded myself with people who encouraged my growth, who celebrated my strengths and supported my weaknesses. I took care of my body, mind, and spirit. I found new hobbies that brought me joy. I allowed myself to dream again. Choosing myself was an act of courage, a bold step into freedom. I knew that no matter what happened, I had made the most important promise, to love and respect myself first. And that promise carried me through the darkest nights and brightest days. I was finally free to be me. The morning sun broke through my bedroom window like a promise. It was soft and warm, spreading light across the room and filling the space with hope. I sat on the edge of my bed and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, I felt calm. Not the restless calm that hides worry beneath it, but a true, steady peace. A new day had arrived, and with it came a chance to begin again. I smiled quietly to myself. Not because I had forgotten the past, far from it, but because I had survived it. I had faced the storm and found strength I did not know I possessed. This day was not perfect. Life never is. There would still be challenges and hard moments ahead, but today felt different. I felt ready to face whatever came with an open heart and a clear mind. I dressed slowly, choosing clothes that made me feel comfortable and confident. As I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had been tested but was standing tall. She was no longer weighed down by bitterness or fear. Instead, there was a quiet glow, a light that came from healing and self-love. I stepped outside into the fresh morning air. The garden was alive with color, the flowers blooming in soft shades of pink, yellow, and white. I had worked hard to care for this garden, and it reflected the care I was learning to give myself. Each petal, each leaf, seemed to remind me that growth is slow but beautiful. I walked slowly through the garden, feeling the earth beneath my feet. It was a grounding sensation, connecting me to the present moment. I closed my eyes and listened to the birds singing. Their songs were simple, pure, and full of life. In that peaceful moment, I understood something important. Happiness is not found in grand events or perfect days. It is found in small moments like this, in the quiet beauty of nature, in the breath we take, and in the love we give ourselves. I thought about the past months, the pain, the tears, the long nights filled with doubt. I thought about how far I had come, and I felt grateful. Gratitude filled my heart like a gentle river. Gratitude for the lessons I had learned. Gratitude for the people who had supported me. Gratitude for the chance to start anew. Later that day, I met with an old friend for coffee. We sat in a small cafe, the sunlight streaming through the windows. We talked about life, about change, and about the future. She looked at me with kind eyes and said, "You seem different, stronger, more at peace." I nodded. "I am different now," I said softly. "I have chosen to let go of what hurt me and to focus on what helps me grow." She smiled. "And you deserve that," she said. Her words warmed me. It was true. I did deserve to be happy. I deserved to be loved, first by myself. As the day went on, I continued to find joy in simple things. I cooked a meal with fresh vegetables from the market. I listened to music that lifted my spirit. I called my mother and told her about my day. It felt good to connect, to share, to be present. When evening came, I sat by the window again. The sky was painted with soft colors of pink and orange. I thought about the future with hope instead of fear. I thought about the dreams I still wanted to pursue. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free to live, to love, and to be myself. I whispered to the night, "Thank you for this new day." And I knew that tomorrow would bring more chances to grow, more moments to choose joy, more reasons to believe in myself. This new day was a gift, a fresh page in the story of my life, and I was ready to write it with courage and grace. Saying thank you felt like opening a door I had kept closed for a long time. It was not just about politeness or habit. It was a deep, heartfelt expression of gratitude for the journey I had been on, for the people who helped me, and for the strength I found inside myself. I sat quietly one morning with a cup of tea, thinking about all the moments that had brought me here. I remembered the times when I felt lost and alone, the days filled with doubt and pain, the nights when I cried quietly, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. And yet, here I was, still standing, still growing. I thought about my daughter, her laughter, sharp and full of teasing, the moment when she mocked my garden, unaware of the secret it held. At first, that memory stung deeply, but over time, I began to understand that her words were a sign of her own struggles, her own misunderstandings. I felt grateful for the chance to heal that rift, to show her that beneath what seemed ordinary, there was a world of beauty and care, that our relationships, like gardens, need patience and love to grow. I also thought about my friends, those who reached out when I needed them most, who listened without judgment, who offered a shoulder to lean on. I whispered a quiet thank you to each of them. Their kindness was like sunlight in the darkest of days. Then, my thoughts turned inward, to the part of me that had carried the weight of betrayal and loss. I realized I had been holding on to blame, for others, and even for myself. But in this moment, I chose to say thank you to myself. Thank you for the courage to face hard truths. Thank you for the patience to heal slowly. Thank you for the love I gave when it was easiest to give up. This gratitude was not about forgetting the past. It was about honoring the lessons it taught me, about recognizing the strength I had gained. I found that saying thank you changed how I saw everything. It shifted my focus from pain to possibility, from fear to hope. I began to write letters, not to send, but to release my feelings. One to my daughter, filled with hope for understanding. One to myself, full of encouragement and love. Writing these letters helped me heal. It gave voice to emotions I had kept locked inside. And it reminded me that gratitude can be a powerful force for change. One afternoon, I met with my daughter in the garden. The flowers were blooming bright and full of life. I reached out my hand and smiled gently. We talked openly, without blame or anger. She began to see the garden, and me, in a new light. That moment was a gift, a new beginning. As days turned into weeks, I continued to practice gratitude. I kept a journal where I wrote down 3 things I was thankful for each day. Sometimes they were simple. A warm cup of tea, a kind word, a quiet moment of peace. Other times they were deeper. A lesson learned, a relationship healed, a step forward. This practice made me more mindful. It helped me see the good, even in difficult times. It filled my heart with warmth. Gratitude also helped me forgive. Not just others, but myself. I let go of guilt and regret. I embraced my imperfections as part of who I was. Saying thank you became a daily ritual. A way to connect with life and its many gifts. A way to celebrate growth, healing, and hope. I realized that gratitude was more than words. It was a feeling, a choice, a way of being. It gave me strength on days when I felt weak. It brought light to shadows that lingered. Looking back, I saw that my journey was not just about pain and loss. It was about discovering beauty in unexpected places, about finding joy in small moments, about learning to love deeply, including myself. Saying thank you was my way of honoring that journey, of recognizing that every step, no matter how hard, had shaped me. And so, I said thank you to the past, to the present, and to the future. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the chance to grow. With a heart full of gratitude, I felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that no matter what happened, I had the power to find light, even in the darkest places, and for that, I was deeply thankful. Forgiving myself was the hardest step of all. It was not something I could rush or force. It was a slow, gentle process, like healing a deep wound that had long been hidden beneath layers of pain and regret. For years, I had carried the weight of blame on my shoulders. I blamed myself for the mistakes I made, for the times I had trusted too easily, for the moments I had stayed silent when I should have spoken up. These thoughts haunted me like a shadow. They whispered doubts and fears in my ear, making me question my worth. I felt trapped in a cycle of guilt that would not end. But one morning, as the sun rose softly outside my window, something inside me shifted. I realized that holding on to this guilt was not helping me. It was only keeping me stuck. I needed to find a way to be kind to myself. To offer the same compassion I would give to a dear friend, I began by sitting quietly and breathing deeply. I closed my eyes and thought about all the moments I had been hard on myself. The times I wished I could change. The times I wished I could take back words or actions. Then, spoke to myself softly, as if comforting a child. "I forgive you," I said aloud. "I forgive you for not knowing better. I forgive you for being afraid. I forgive you for all the times you felt alone." At first it felt strange, almost impossible. How could I forgive myself for things that felt so real and painful? But I kept practicing. Day after day, I wrote down my feelings in a journal. I acknowledged the mistakes I had made, but I also recognized the lessons they taught me. I reminded myself that I am human, imperfect and growing. Sometimes tears came as I faced my own pain, but tears are part of healing. They wash away the hurt and make room for hope. I also learned to let go of the shoulds, those harsh rules I set for myself. I should have been stronger. I should have seen it coming. I should have done more. These words only caused more suffering. Instead, I replaced them with kindness and understanding. I did the best I could with what I knew. I am learning every day. I deserve love and forgiveness. This shift in thinking was freeing. It opened my heart to healing. It allowed me to move forward without the heavy burden of guilt. I found comfort in small acts of self-care. A warm bath after a long day, a walk in the fresh air, moments of quiet reflection. Each act was a way of saying to myself, "You matter, you are worthy." I also reached out for support when I needed it. Talking to a trusted friend or counselor helped me see myself through kinder eyes. Sometimes, hearing someone say, "You are not alone," was enough to ease the pain. Slowly, forgiveness began to take root in my heart. It was not perfect or complete. It was a journey, not a destination. But every step forward was a victory. With forgiveness came new strength. I began to believe in my own goodness again. I saw that mistakes do not define me. What matters is how I grow from them. This inner peace showed in the way I lived each day. I smiled more easily. I spoke with more confidence. I treated myself with gentleness. Most importantly, I stopped punishing myself for the past. I made space for hope and joy. One evening, as the sky turned soft shades of pink and purple, I sat quietly and reflected on my journey. I thought about how far I had come, from pain to healing, from blame to forgiveness, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for others, but for myself, for the courage it took to face my own heart, for the patience to heal at my own pace, for the love I had learned to give myself. Forgiving myself was not the end of my story. It was a new beginning. A chance to live with freedom, kindness, and hope. I knew there would still be challenges ahead. Life is never easy or perfect. But now, I had a stronger foundation. A foundation built on self-compassion and grace. I whispered softly to the night, "I forgive you and I forgive me," and with those words a new chapter began. Freedom came to me in small moments, gentle and unexpected. It was not a loud celebration or a grand event. It was a quiet feeling that grew inside my heart, slowly but surely, until it filled every corner of my life. For many years I had felt trapped by expectations, trapped by pain, trapped by the weight of other people's opinions and my own fears. I lived with the belief that I had to be perfect, that I had to please others to be loved, that my worth depended on how well I could hide my struggles, But one day something shifted. I realized that true freedom was not about escaping problems or avoiding pain. It was about accepting myself completely, the good and the bad, the strong and the weak. I began to notice the small freedoms in everyday life, the freedom to wake up without dread, the freedom to choose kindness instead of anger, the freedom to say no when something did not feel right. I started to let go of things that no longer served me, old grudges, negative thoughts, unhealthy relationships. It was not easy to release these things. They had become part of my life for so long that letting go felt like losing a part of myself. But I knew that holding on only kept me bound. So, I took small steps. Each day I made a choice to be free, to breathe deeply and feel the air in my lungs, to walk barefoot on soft grass and feel the earth beneath my feet. These moments grounded me. They reminded me that I am connected to the world in a simple, beautiful way. I also found freedom in creativity. I began to paint again, something I had not done in years. With each brushstroke, I expressed feelings that words could not capture. The colors and shapes told stories of pain, hope, and healing. Painting became a way to celebrate my freedom, a freedom to be myself without judgment. Learned to dance alone in my living room. I laughed loudly without caring who heard me. I sang in the shower with no concern for how I sounded. These simple acts were powerful. They were reminders that life is meant to be lived fully, with joy and freedom. One afternoon, I walked in the park near my home. The sun was warm on my face, and the breeze whispered through the trees. I closed my eyes and felt a deep peace. In that moment, I knew I was free. Free from the chains of fear and doubt. Free from the need to prove myself. Free to live with an open heart. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain and betrayal I had faced, the long nights of tears and confusion, the slow process of healing and self-discovery. All of it had led me to this freedom, a freedom rooted in self-love and acceptance. I also thought about my daughter. Our relationship had changed in many ways. We had learned to understand each other better, to forgive and to grow. I hoped that she too would find her own freedom someday. I realized that freedom is not something I can give to others. It is something each person must find for themselves. But I could offer love and support along the way. That day, I made a promise to myself. To protect my freedom. To nurture it like a delicate flower. To remember that it is a gift I have earned through courage and patience. I also promised to share my story. Not to boast, but to inspire. To show others that even in the darkest times, freedom is possible. It is a freedom that starts within. A freedom that grows with every choice to be kind, to forgive, and to hope. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink, I stood quietly and smiled. I felt the warmth of freedom glowing inside me. I was free, truly free. Knowing who I am did not come suddenly. It was a journey that unfolded slowly, like the opening of a flower in the early morning light. Each petal revealed a deeper part of myself, my strengths, my fears, my dreams, and my truths. For many years, I had lived with uncertainty. I was unsure about my place in the world, my value, and my purpose. I looked for answers outside of myself, in the opinions of others, in their approval, and in their expectations. But those answers never felt complete or true. I spent so much time trying to fit into roles that others wanted me to play. A good mother, a caring wife, a successful woman. I thought these roles would define me, but instead they often made me feel lost. There were moments when I doubted my worth, times when I felt invisible or unimportant, times when I asked myself, who am I, really? But over time, through pain and healing, I began to see clearly. I started to listen to the quiet voice inside me, the voice that spoke of hope, courage, and love. I discovered that I am more than the roles I play. I am a woman with a story that is uniquely mine, a story filled with both light and shadow. I am the woman who cared for her garden, nurturing life with patience and love. I am the woman who faced betrayal, but found strength to heal. I am the woman who forgave herself and others. I am the woman who learned to say no and to choose peace. I began to celebrate these parts of myself. I realized that my past, with all its struggles, had shaped me into who I am today. Not broken or damaged, but whole and resilient. Knowing who I am also meant accepting my imperfections. I am not perfect. I make mistakes. I have fears and doubts. But these do not define me. They make me human. I found freedom in this acceptance. I no longer needed to hide my weaknesses or pretend to be someone I am not. I could be honest with myself and with others. This honesty deepened my relationships. I became more open and authentic with my daughter, with friends, and with myself. I shared my feelings and listened with my heart. In doing so, I felt closer to the people I loved. Our connections grew stronger because they were based on truth and understanding. Knowing who I am also gave me clarity about my future. I began to see what I truly wanted, not what others expected. I dreamed of new possibilities and embraced the chance to start fresh. I set goals that reflected my values and passions. I made choices that honored my well-being and happiness. I learned to trust my instincts and to believe in my abilities. This journey was not without challenges. There were times when old fears returned, trying to pull me back into doubt. But now, I had tools to face them: self-compassion, patience, and the support of those who cared for me. I reminded myself daily, I am enough. I am worthy. I am strong. One evening, as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I saw a woman who had been through much, but still shone with quiet strength. Her eyes held stories of pain and healing. Her smile spoke of hope and courage. In that moment, I whispered softly, to myself, I know who I am. This knowledge was a gift, one that I carried with pride and humility. It was a light to guide me through life's uncertainties, a foundation for living with purpose and joy. I wanted to share this gift with others, especially those who felt lost or uncertain. I wanted them to know that it is possible to find yourself, even after great hardship, that you do not need to have all the answers right away. What matters is the willingness to keep searching and growing. If I could say one thing to you, the listener, it would be this: you are more than you realize. You have a story worth telling, and you have the strength to discover who you truly are. Take your time. Be gentle with yourself. Listen to your heart. You will find your way. Knowing who I am has changed everything. It has brought me peace and confidence. It has opened my eyes to the beauty of life and the power within me. And now, as I look toward the future, I feel ready. Ready to embrace whatever comes next with an open heart and a clear mind. I know who I am, and I am proud of her. Before I close this story, I want to speak directly to you, the listener. This is not just the end of a journey for me. It is a moment to share what I have learned, what I hope you take with you, and the message I carry deep in my heart. Life is not easy. We all face challenges, pain, and moments when the world feels heavy. Sometimes those closest to us may hurt us, even without meaning to. Trust can be broken. Dreams can feel shattered. But even in the darkest times, there is light waiting to be found. If you are listening to my story, perhaps you have experienced some of the same feelings I did. Loneliness, confusion, or fear. Maybe you have faced betrayal or disappointment. Or maybe you simply feel lost, unsure of who you are or where you belong. To you, I say this: you are not alone. Your feelings are real and valid. It is okay to feel pain. It is okay to grieve. But please, do not give up on yourself. Inside you, there is a strength that you may not see yet. A strength that can carry you through hard days and long nights. A strength that grows when you are kind to yourself, when you forgive, and when you allow yourself to heal. I learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing what happened. It is about freeing yourself from the chains of anger and hurt. Forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, a chance to breathe easier and live lighter. I also learned the power of self-love. Loving yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. When you love yourself, you set boundaries that protect your heart. You choose peace over pain. You open the door to new possibilities. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to friends, family, or a counselor if you need someone to listen. There is no shame in needing support. It is a sign of courage. Remember, healing is not a straight path. There will be good days and bad days, progress and setbacks. Be patient with yourself. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. Cherish the small joys in life. A warm cup of tea, the sound of birds singing, a smile from a stranger. These moments remind us that life is still beautiful. If you are struggling with family or relationships, know that you have the right to protect your heart. Sometimes love means setting limits. Sometimes it means letting go. It is painful, but it can also lead to growth and freedom. I want you to know that your story matters. Your pain, your healing, your journey, they are important. You have lessons to teach, love to give, and a unique light to share with the world. As you listen to my story, I hope you feel a connection, a reminder that we are all human, all imperfect, all growing, and that we can find strength in our vulnerability. Please remember to be gentle with yourself. Speak kindly to your inner voice. Celebrate your small victories, and never stop believing in your worth. I am grateful that you chose to spend this time with me. Thank you for listening to my story, for opening your heart. I hope it brought you comfort, hope, and a sense of peace. Before we part, I want to leave you with this. You have the power to write your own story. No matter what has happened, you can choose how to move forward. You can find healing. You can find joy. You can find freedom. Trust yourself. Believe in your journey. And know that you are never truly alone. From my heart to yours, thank you.